You know, as a kid, I was always afraid of creepypastas. I grew up reading stories about Slender Man, Jeff the Killer, The Rake, Smile Dog, and many others. Today I laugh at even having been so naive. Do you know, it's true that reality trumps fiction, as I heard horror stories much calmer than what happened to me. Being the new girl was never easy, especially when you enter school near the end. I'm a very introverted girl, and it's usually hard for me to make friends. Even though I met a few girls and it's been a few years, I still feel like I haven't fully integrated. I always felt like they weren't sure about me. Even though the four of us watched horror stuff and that brought us together, I felt like I was the fourth in the group, that they really didn't care about me. Part of me told me that it was obvious. They had known each other all their lives and I had only known them for a short time. Another part of me told me that I was being paranoid, that they were treating me like one of the group. Whatever the case, I was happy to have friends. But as you can imagine, this is not a story of friendship, let alone a happy one. It is a story of the most horrible day of my life. That day, I woke up at dawn in my house. A noise had woken me up. At first, I used to think it was something paranormal, but over time, I just got used to it. My house was genuinely scary. When the lights went out, it was really dark. There were noises everywhere and the hallways were unnecessarily long. You always felt like something was about to happen to you. And when my friends came here a few years ago, they didn't want to come back. They were terrified. But this story doesn't take place in my spooky house. It takes place in a happy, familiar, and warm house. The home of Jennifer, one of my three friends. That night, Jennifer had planned a sleepover. We would watch horror movies and creepypastas videos. As I said before, I used to be afraid of them, but my friends were fascinated with creepypastas. It was a weird obsession. They saw the villains of these stories as if they were heroes, as if they were goddesses to be worshipped. I left my house and went to Jennifer's house. The first thing that surprised me that night was that even though I had arrived 15 minutes early at the sleepover, I was the last one to arrive. All my friends had arrived much earlier. Why had they invited me so late? Had they talked about me? I wanted to ask them, but honestly, I couldn't bring myself to ask. Maybe it was a mistake, or maybe they all arrived earlier. I didn't really question anything and avoided getting angry or confronting people. We spent the evening quietly watching movies. Jennifer's parents had gone on a trip, and she had the weekend off at the house, so we could be quiet without anyone bothering us with noise. Little did I know what that would mean soon after. One of my friends went to the bathroom while we continued to watch Hellraiser on TV. Then suddenly, we heard a scream. It was our friend's scream. It was coming from Jennifer's room. We all ran to see what was wrong, and when we entered the room, I turned on the light, and I was shocked. Jennifer's room. It was full of creepypasta posters of Jeff the Killer. There were red marks all over the floor and bed, and all the furniture was off to the side. In the center of the room, there was a drawing. It looked like a pentagram, but it had another shape. Was it the mark of Jeff the Killer? After seeing that horrible image for a moment, I couldn't see anything. I felt an impact on my head that knocked me to the floor. Kneeling down, I touched my head. There was blood on it. I turned around, and Jennifer was behind me with a stone in her hand. Jennifer, you said she'd pass out with one hit. And what do you want me to do? In the movies, that always works. Lucy is still conscious. And now what do we do? Girls, why? Before I could finish the sentence, they all started hitting me at the same time. Their blows were brutal and cruel. I didn't understand why, but my friends were hitting me so violently that it seemed like they hated me. I fell to the floor and my whole body hurt, but I still didn't lose consciousness. The only thing I could do was cry. I didn't understand why this was happening to me. I only went to a sleepover with my friends. We are sorry, Lucy. I don't. But we have to do this. You are the perfect sacrifice for Jeff the Killer to accept us in his clan. Jeff the Killer? Were they crazy? I wanted to scream at them that Jeff the Killer is just a creepypasta, that he didn't exist. but my body wasn't working. The pain was too much, and I was still dizzy from the blow with the stone. Suddenly, Laura grabbed my legs and pulled me to the center of the room. Ellen took a book and started reciting words in a language I didn't know, while the rest of my friends were surrounding me like a triangle. That thing they were doing, I saw it in a story. They were doing a ritual. They truly believed that they could summon Jeff the Killer. My friends pronounced the last part of the ritual with great emotion, and when they finished, silence. Suddenly, Eileen broke the silence. "What the hell, Jennifer? Nothing has happened. Maybe we did something wrong." I took advantage of this moment of bewilderment to run for my life. Somehow, my body made one last attempt to function, and I ran as fast as I could. I escaped from the rooms and went to the exit of the house, while my friends, confused, chased me from behind. With a last-ditch effort, I managed to escape the house and slammed the door in their faces. I was going to be fine. I was going to escape. Or so I thought. Halfway there, my legs gave out and I fell to the ground. I tried to get up, but everything was confusing. I was really very dizzy. The sudden movement and the injury to my head were not enough to make me faint, but it was enough to leave me with no chance to run away. I couldn't even stand up as I was falling again. As I tried to stand up, Jennifer hit me again, and while Laura checked to make sure no one saw us, Eileen pulled me back into the house. As I walked in, I could see their faces. Laura was sad and hesitant. Eileen was just furious, and Jennifer just had a huge smile on her face for what was to come. At that moment, I realized that she didn't care about Jeff the Killer, just a cruel person who enjoyed hurting people. Once back in her room, Laura closed the door and locked it. "I'm so sorry, Lucy. I can't believe this is happening. It was all for nothing. We have to do this. It's the only way we don't get in trouble." I tried to figure out what was going on, but when I saw the look on Jennifer's face and Laura's apology, I knew it was about to happen. I knew what was about to happen. Jennifer hit me brutally. She intended to kill me. I felt totally helpless. I didn't even have the energy to cry anymore. Finally, I began to lose consciousness. Everything was getting very confusing, and the last thing I saw was Jennifer stopping to grab the rock again. Before it hit me, my eyes closed. When I woke up, I wasn't dead. My parents were around me sleeping. I seemed to be passed out for a while, but I was alive. My parents woke up and the doctors came to me, running a bunch of tests and asking me if I remember what happened. I stayed in the hospital a while longer. During that time, the police asked me a lot of questions. Shortly thereafter, I learned the reason I had survived. Just before Jennifer hit me with the rock, Eileen stopped her. She was willing to sacrifice me for Jeff the Killer. But when she saw the eyes of Jennifer, who had convinced them to do all of this, she understood that this had all been Jennifer's plan, an excuse to kill someone. Quickly, Laura sided with Eileen, and she was detained long enough for the police to arrive. Jennifer tried to lie, but my other two friends told me everything that had happened. I never saw them again, and they are all facing a terrible trial. But at least I received their apologies, and I accepted them. Jennifer, on the other hand, never apologized. Today, she is the most complicated in the eyes of the law. And since we all recently turned 18, she will be sentenced as an adult. As time went on, I got better. Little by little, I came out of my shell and began to socialize more. But what I experienced that night will leave me scarred forever. Today, I have lost my ability to trust, and I am always alert. I am no longer afraid of the dark, nor of my house, much less of Jeff the Killer. To tell the truth, humans are much worse. My entire childhood and most early adult life was spent in a small village in the Indian Himalayas. I was born in the shadows of those mountains. The small village I grew up in was mostly occupied by the families of farmers who grew crops on the slopes of the mountains. My family, however, wasn't into farming. My mother was a housewife, and my dad was a head postman of our village. That's why everyone in the village knew my family. As a result, I had many friends growing up, but my best friends were 3 little boys my age, Raj, Rohan, and Kapil. From the tender age of 5, the 4 of us used to play all over the village. We went to school together, studied together, played together, and even got scolded by the elders of the village together. Those were the best days of my life. No worry about the future or the past, just living in the present. Kapil's family was one of the wealthiest families in the village. No, they didn't have a supercar or a big mansion by any means, but they had a lot of cattle and vast expanses of land on the mountains to farm on. This was considered to be rich in our little village. Now that you know the background of our small village, you will understand my story better, as this incident happened when we were 16 years old. As teen boys, all we wanted to do was run around and play cricket, and be in the outdoors as much as possible. So when Kapil suggested having a sleepover at his place, we were all super thrilled. However, this sleepover would not be at Kapil's home. Rather, there was a big watch post right in the middle of Kapil's field. We would be sleeping there for a night. This was back in the 1990s, so even though the village had electricity, there was no connection in the middle of the field. So we had to carry lanterns to light up the watch post. No cell phones, nothing. Just 4 kids lying under the starlit sky. We picked a weekend for the sleepover so that we could sleep in without bothering about school. At around 7 in the evening, Kapil's mother served us food. Nothing special, just some curry and rice. She packed some snacks for us, 2 big water bottles, and some heavy bedding, as the temperature dropped to single digits at night. However, before we could leave, Kapil's grandfather, who was a frail old man of 80, called us. "You boys come here." He motioned for us to come near. He was always the grandfather I never had, a really loving, happy old man. Before Kapil's father, he took care of the fields and the cattle. But now, due to his weak bones and old age, he mostly just sat on the porch and watched as life went by in the village. "What is it, Grandpa?" Kapil asked. "Your mother told me that you boys are going to have a sleepover at the big watch post in the field." "Yeah, that's right." Have fun, but remember a rule of thumb. Once you get to the top of the watch post, no matter what happens, do not get down before the sun rises." "What if we have to pee?" asked Raj mockingly. "Pee before going up there," he replied in a stern voice. "But why, Grandpa?" This time it was me asking the old man. "Nothing that bothers you boys. Just listen to me and do not climb down the watch post at any point during the night, no matter what happens and what you see." Definitely, Kapil's grandpa had spooked us. As we walked towards the field, Raj and Kapil were quick to lighten the mood. Before going up, we relieved ourselves, and then, one by one, climbed the steep ladder leading to the top of the watch post. The sky wasn't cloudy, so we could see millions of stars from up there. We quickly made our beds and settled into them. However, we weren't sleepy at all. So Raj decided to narrate some horror stories. Most of them weren't scary at all, and we were having a great time. When I suddenly remembered what Kapil's grandpa had said. "Hey, Kapil, why did your grandfather tell us not to leave the watch post at night?" "Honestly, I don't know. You see, when he was not so old, he used to sleep on the watch post almost every night. He guarded our crops from up here. But who knows what he meant? I would suggest we listen to him and just stay up here." Sometime between the jokes and laughter, all of us fell asleep under the sparkling sky and cold breeze. However, sometime in the middle of the night, Kapil, who was sleeping beside me, woke me up. He was tapping on my shoulder and whispering something. When I paid attention, I heard him say, Sonny, wake up, wake up, look at that, wake up." When I was completely awake, Kapil was standing by the railing of the watch post, and somewhere, far in the distance, there was a movement in between the crops. We could not see anything except the rustling crops. "What is it? It must be an animal. Maybe a wild boar, perhaps?" I suggested. No, you must look." Kapil seemed thrilled and scared at the same time. So I kept on looking at the spot in the field where the crops were rustling. Something was moving within the crops. The field was divided into square blocks, and there was a small walkway between two parallel squares of crops. Suddenly, a deer emerged from one of the squares and leapt into another square of crops. I and Kapil were awestruck, as it wasn't a normal deer. It was as if the animal had an unnatural glow. There was rustling in the crops again, and we fully expected to see the deer again, when instead of a deer, we saw a wild boar come out. Mind you, there was no other animal in the field, just the deer. I and Kapil exchanged a look as if asking each other, how is this possible? The wild boar went into the crops again, and there was some more rustling. And it was a horse. This horse had glowing yellow eyes, and he was looking straight at us. But then, I and Kapil were terrified. We had no clue how one animal could turn into so many different animals. The horse walked a few meters on the walkway towards us, and then the horse walked into the crops again. This time, however, there was no rustling. Instead, a beautiful peacock walked out of the field towards the forest. The peacock spotted us and then quickly disappeared into the forest. I and Kapil were just looking at the wonder we had just seen. We had no clue what or who it was, just that it was something paranormal or supernatural. We checked our watches and it was 3:45 in the morning. So instead of sleeping, we ate the snack we had with us, all while Raj and Rohan snored peacefully, unaware of anything unfolding around them. As soon as we could see the first ray of sun, I and Kapil climbed down, leaving our two friends fast asleep behind us, and walked towards Kapil's home. As soon as we reached his front yard, his grandpa was already awake and having his breakfast and tea on the porch. His face had an all-knowing smile on it, as if he was well aware of what we had witnessed at night. I couldn't hold myself and narrated everything we had seen to the old man. He looked at us, smiled a kind smile, and said, "That's the protector spirit." "What do you mean?" "You see, when my father got this land, he prayed to the village god for prosperity and a good yield of crops every year. In turn, a protector spirit appeared on our field. The spirit can be seen in many forms. It may sometimes be an animal, a bird, or even a human. Depending on what the intention of the watcher is, the spirit changes forms. You meant no harm to the field. That's why you saw animals like boar, deer, and horses, etc. To people who are there to destroy the crops, this spirit can appear in another form. Maybe a wild cat or something like that. The reason why I did not allow you to step down is that this spirit could perceive you as a threat and attack you." With that, he went back to sipping his tea. After that, Kapil and I saw the protector spirit twice more when we had similar sleepovers. However, to date, I remember the chills I got when I saw the spirit shapeshift into different animals. We never told anyone other than his grandpa about this, but it sure was a thrilling experience.